pre-tax when you put the money in, tax-deferred growth, and tax-free withdrawals. It's not the Roth IRA, it's the HSA. And today, we're going to walk you through it.
All right, grab your favorite mug. It's time for Coffee with Your Retirement Coach.
Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. Your coaches behind the clipboard today. I'm Nic Yeomans. With me, as always, my partner, my pal, my dad, Randy Yeomans. Welcome.
Good to be here, Nick.
Yeah. Today, we're going to talk all things HSA. We're going to give you 7 great takeaways all about the healthcare the health savings account. And Randy, I got to tell you, I'm really excited to educate our audience around the HSA. They're going to walk away with more understanding about, in my opinion, one of the most misunderstood but incredible investments that you could really make towards your future retirement.
Yeah, I think not only is it people don't understand it, they potentially don't optimize how they use it. And I think that's really what they're going to get out of today's session.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I hear it oftentimes deemed it's triple tax free.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't think of another investment that you could put money in before taxes. You get the tax deferred growth. And if you take the money out for an eligible expense, it's tax free. There's nothing else out there that I know of like that.
Yeah. And, I think the other thing is a lot of people don't understand that you could be eligible and not even know it. You just automatically get your company's normal default, insurance option, and you didn't even know that there was another option that might be an even better deal for you.
I think it's like anything else, whether it's 401k or other benefits that employers offer. Sometimes there's just not enough education, and frequently people have last-minute decisions to make. They don't explore it. Nobody really educates them. So today, I think we're going to dive into this and they'll have a better understanding. And to me, after you've matched your 401, or after you've contributed up to the match with your employer's 401k, this has got to be your go-to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And so for our audience today, 2026, we've got new limits. So if you're an individual today, Randy, you can contribute up to $4,400 towards your HSA.
I can't. But we'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah. For families, they can contribute up to $8,750 per year. Right. And then if you're over the age of 55, there's a $1,000 catch-up, right?
Right.
Not catch-up.
Not catch-up.
Okay.
No.
I didn't know if you were going to take it. All right.
No, I didn't take the bait.
You didn't take it. So I've had a lot of conversations about what happens once the money goes into these accounts? Yeah. And many people don't know that a lot of these accounts actually have the option for you to invest the funds once they're in the HSA, much like you would an IRA.
Yeah, or a 401k. So it's more like a 401k. In most plans, you have to move the money from sitting in cash into the investment side of the strategy. And what happens, though, there's 2 potential risks here of people not being able to understand exactly what that option is. First of all, it's kind of like once people do their tax returns, they just forget about doing any tax planning the rest of the year. So once you've decided to make contributions into this, and if you're wondering whether you should or not, you probably should. If you're putting money in there, then you've got to step out of your comfort zone, log into the plan, and tactfully move the money into an investment. Now, this is making the assumption you're going to do the plan the way we're going to walk people through it today, which is to use it for when you're going to have major expenses later in life. This is our personal philosophy of why the HSA is such a great investment vehicle for healthcare and for future expenses.
Well, and let's talk, Randy, break down for us what is and I know you and I've talked about this several times, one of the biggest mistakes people use when it comes to an HSA and using that HSA.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that they do use it. I think for many people who can afford to make contributions into the HSA, they really don't need the money for medical expenses. And so they're using it. They'll get a card that allows them to go to the doctor and use it. So there's no education around this. So think about the whole concept of compounding return. So it's been my experience. I've been doing this for a long time, as you have. when clients are spending the most money in their life on medical is later in life. Most people aren't spending a lot of money on, the doctor's appointments and all that. If you're using that money for that, you probably should be in the FSA, not the HSA,
Right.
which gets confused. I think the rules get confused about them. So there's a couple of steps that you need to do to optimize it, but it's well worth optimizing. And it involves you getting involved in the plan, so if you're putting money into the HSA, it's building up in a kind of a cash savings, then you want to learn how to get into that plan and move the money into investments based on your risk tolerance and the time frame in which you might use it. So I've made contributions into my HSA. I've never used it. I'm waiting until I get old. If that ever happens, I am going to use that money. But the reason is I want that money to grow tax-free. That's money I never paid tax on, growing tax-free. And later, when I might have some major medical expenses, I'm going to be able to take that money out. And it could be during that period of time when I'm subject to required minimum distributions. I'm getting a pension. I'm getting Social Security. I've got RMDs. I've got dividend income. And I can take money from this HSA for qualified medical expenses and pay no taxes on it. So it's really that triple tax advantage is truly a unique thing for the HSA.
And I completely agree. And so I think people who are using it currently, that's one of the big mistakes, right? So they're putting money in, but they're using it for the basic doctor appointment, the basic dentist appointment, et cetera, right? Instead of just trying to grow the heck out of it when, those healthcare expenses could be at really, big dollar amounts, right? I think the second big mistake that I see with the HSA, Randy, is that, people they aren't managing it. So, they, like you said, it's out of sight, out of mind. They aren't thinking about it as a complete piece of the retirement plan.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, pre-retirement age, this is a huge miss because you only really have until that age 65 to really fund the heck out of this thing.
Right. I mean, if you go back years and years ago when I was in the beginning in the industry, I was a big proponent of doing the IRA, which was only $2,000 a year. But if you compounded and grew that money, over a reasonable period of time, of your career, you could be worth $1 million in your IRA if you just did 2,000. So you can imagine doing 3,400 or 8,750 into that account for years and years and years, and then ultimately not only did you deduct it like you maybe could have an IRA or 401k, but you could take the money out tax-free like a Roth. It's kind of got the best of both features in it, but it should be a part of an overall plan. And you need to do it as young as you practically can afford to do it, even if it's a small dollar amount. What I've learned over the years is if you will set up something systematically to come out of your paycheck, and like you said, you just kind of forget about it. You spend what you bring home, but you don't spend what you don't bring home. So if you can get that savings going, I'd fund the 401k at least up to the company match first, but then the second pool of money I would go to is the HSA, and then get that money invested, take the extra step to do that. And then when you get age 65, you're not going to be able to make contributions anymore. But that doesn't mean you need to pull the money out. As a matter of fact, if you take it out, I think it's before 65, I think there's a 20% penalty plus tax.
If you liquidate it.
If you liquidate it. So you wouldn't want to do that. If you're using it for eligible expenses, it's the same thing as you might use a 529 plan. Use it for eligible expenses. But even the 529 plan, which is phenomenal for something like that, you can't deduct the contributions. Again, it's such a unique thing, but it needs to be managed as such. And people need to try to maximize that, make modifications, even if you start with a small dollar amount and gradually work it up, but get that built up before you turn 65 and you're no longer eligible to make contributions.
Yeah, no, I think that is great advice. Now, a lot of people have concerns that, it limits what I can use the money for. And they many times have in their mind, hospital bills and doctor's office visits, right? And that's where a lot of people have the framing around the HSA, so they don't want to put a significant amount of money in there because what if they need money for other things, right? But the reality is there's a lot more to it. So our retirement uses outside of just doctor visits and hospitals, how about prescriptions, dental, vision, hearing aids, right?
I had a client in the other day, and I'm not kidding, husband and wife, awesome people, relatively new to the firm, and we were talking about dental expenses, and it's probably the fifth one in a month I've had clients talk about how expensive their dental work is as we get older. So you've got known expenses as you get older, just maintenance, just keeping yourself up. There's things that you're going to have to do.
Right.
She said that she spent about $20,000 on her teeth over the last year, and her husband pointed at his teeth and said $125,000.
Oh my gosh.
So it can be very expensive. So let's just be honest with one another. It's not going to be like you're not going to have eligible expenses down the road. The cool thing is there's no withdrawal requirement. Like you don't have to start taking the money.
Yeah,
R&D, if you will, on it. So it is a great tool. Now, I'm going to say this. We're giving a lot of bullet points. We're giving a lot of great insight, I think, so people will reconsider this, which they should. But you really should work with your financial professional to see how much this should be a part of your overall plan. What I'm thinking is it just gets overlooked. It's not as well understood as the traditional 401k, the IRA, maybe even the FSA. And if we have a minute at the end of today's session, why don't we walk people through the FSA too and show them the difference and where there's an advantage to each.
All right. So Randy, I think the reason a lot of people aren't engaging with HSAs, I think a lot of financial professionals are limited in their knowledge of how to use them. Yeah. But I also think that, a lot of people in our industry aren't paid to help people with, managing the HSA. Yeah. So there is a little bit of a conflict of interest of either one, there's a lack of knowledge, or two, I have no financial incentive to help somebody with it.
It's so sad but true. But I think there's an ethical requirement for people who hold themselves as fiduciary to bring these kind of things up and talk about them. Unfortunately, the majority of our clients are right at retirement by the time they come to see us because we focus on retirement. We focus on that transition phase into living on your money instead of accumulating your money. So we aren't early on with a lot of clients, but those that we have early on in that stage, the HSA is a fantastic tool. A matter of fact, even when it comes to things like 529 plans, the same thing. I see people in 529 plans that they're in plans, not the best plan, but a plan that pays a commission to their advisor. And, we have over and over again suggested people use the best plan, and most of the best plans don't pay any advisor for the work. We just want to make sure the 529 plan does its job, the HSA does its job, because clients that are hiring us are expecting us to have integrity in what we're offering.
Yeah, no, so true. But Randy, I do want to point out a couple other qualified expenses that I think would be relevant for our audience. I mean, the reality is Medicare Part B and D premiums, Medicare Advantage premiums, qualified long-term care expenses, certain long-term care premiums. Like there is so much that you could actually use the funds out of an HSA for.
And that's why it's a long-term vehicle. And you don't spend it now, you use it for later when you're going to have those major expenses. So it's a great part of an overall financial plan. Don't overlook it, become educated about it, learn about that, and don't skip it in your enrollment.
Randy, I'd really like to go back and revisit withdrawals for qualifying medical expenses. And so if I know there's a difference between, if I'm younger than 65 or older than 65, so I want to take some money out, but again, it's not for one of those qualified medical expenses.
Okay.
How am I taxed or penalized on that?
So if I'm right, before 65, it's a 20% penalty plus ordinary income tax. So don't do it. I mean, there's obviously circumstances in which somebody might do that. And if that's the case, that might, we're in dire straits. If you're over 65, and I would still tell you not to do it, but if you did, then you're paid an ordinary income tax on it, but you're not paying the 20% penalty.
So just like an IRA,
or very much like it's got its own set of rules. And that's why, again, I think it's part of an overall financial plan. And you've got to make some judgment calls as to what makes sense. When we talk about the 401k, which we're big proponents of, what we find is a lot of times we're steering people to at least put a portion of that money into the Roth side of their 401k. Since the employer contributions are all going to be pre-tax, you should be building up some never tax stuff
Yeah,
as well.
I love that. Never taxed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, here's the last thing that I really want to, convey to people, because there were old rules that, they've changed.
Yes.
So people were wary of an HSA, because what if I died and I didn't use the money?
Right.
But today, Randy, how does that work?
So I don't know, Nick.
Oh. Good thing I'm
What if
here.
you die?
Good
What
thing
if you
I'm
die?
here.
What if you die?
Yeah. All right.
Hey, Nick, what if you die?
One day. So an HSA today is really powerful in that it can be inherited, right? So my spouse, we can incorporate the HSA into my estate plan. I can name my spouse as a beneficiary, and she can continue to use it for her qualified healthcare needs, completely tax-free. It doesn't work that same way for kids, however. So the kids generally can be beneficiaries. However, they're going to receive lump sums and pay ordinary income tax.
Yeah. So, like so many other things, like the traditional 401k and IRA. So those features are really designed. What I have discovered, again, I've been doing this for a long time, that one of the number one concerns people have is maintaining their own financial independence. The best gift I think parents could give their children is maintaining financial independence and security. What we want to do as financial planners is help give them confidence. And confidence, I believe, comes through education and competence. And what we want to do is raise people's IQ when it comes to these things so that they're making better decisions. And Nick, I think this is a great example of one of those cool tax kind of legal loopholes that people don't know and use as frequently as they could for all the reasons that you mentioned. Let's take a minute just to talk a little bit about the FSA as well.
Yeah, and I think let's do a little comparison or compare and contrast. With an HSA, you own it. Okay, you actually own it. With an FSA, that is an employer-sponsored plan, and it's not actually yours.
Right. But the cool thing about it is, even if you haven't fully funded it, you could sometimes use it for qualified medical expenses before you've even put all the money in it.
Yeah, well, and that's 100% true. Because really what you're doing with the FSA is you're committing to fund a certain dollar amount in a plan year. Right. It doesn't mean that you've put all the money up front into it.
Right. So between the two of them, they can work really hand in hand. So if you've got somebody who's got qualified medical expenses that fit the FSA, routine doctor's exams that they have to do, maybe they're in treatment for something, or they have medications and things that are ongoing and routine, I believe maybe even concierge doctors in that, but there's certain things that you may have that are part of your every year, this is what you spend. Then putting the money in the FSA or using the FSA to fund those is really smart. People make mistakes with those because they don't know how much to fund. So if I was erring when it comes to the FSA, I'd put too little in it rather than too much in it.
Yeah.
Because it's a use it or lose it. So,
yeah. Well, and to that point, Randy, it's also limited up to $3,400
Right.
for 2026.
Right.
So it's not like you can put huge amounts of money in
Exactly.
it. But to your point, I would also err on the side of caution there and maybe not try to overfund it.
Yeah, and it's been our experience that many people have shared with us who've used them that sometimes it's a little more cumbersome to deal with in getting your qualified expenses paid for. So again, each plan might be a little bit different, but it's a little more clunky for some people. I feel like that's what I would say about it than the HSA. Yeah. HSA long-term, think Roth, think big tax benefits down the road, FSA now. Don't get them confused. Don't use, if you can afford to, don't use your HSA for things that will be better spent with an FSA or that you could pay out of pocket.
Yeah. Well, and I know this can get confusing, but one thing I love about the HSA is that it's portable. Like if our company,
Yes.
merged, or if you find yourself unemployed and you find a new job, so like it's a portable plan. Whereas most of the time, not always, the FSA kind of ends with your employment, at your current plan.
And as I mentioned, because I'm over 65, as hard as that is to believe, but when I revisited my HSA, doing that exact thing and porting it over to another plan, I was shocked how much growth that had. Because once I set that up, I had the investment strategy for a long-term allocation, just kept making the contributions and never paid any attention. The amount of growth that was in that account was phenomenal. So my contributions versus what it was worth was substantially different. And I'll be able to use all of that money tax-free for qualified medical expenses. It's a great tool. I think it in its own right may be better than a Roth in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I totally get it, because again, being able to fund it without any taxes up front, that's the one missing component to the Roth.
Right.
So
let's wrap it up. Nick, what should people do? What should the people do?
You know, Randy, there is one more compare and contrast that I really do like, in thinking about the HSA versus the FSA. The HSA having the ability to grow it, as you were talking about, people need to understand you do not have that same ability with the FSA, right? So that is not an account where you could try to maximize growth or try to select investment options. It's what you have deferred out of your paycheck is essentially what you have access to spend.
Right. So let me ask you this then, Nick. What do you think somebody with an FSA should be doing? If you're going to fund an FSA, what would you think about in terms of using it as part of your overall financial plan?
Here's your 5 takeaways for the HSA. Number 1, I want you to think about an HSA as a healthcare Roth IRA. It's even better when you consider that it's actually triple tax-free, unlike the Roth, which is just double tax-free. Number 2, we're investing long-term dollars when appropriate. Think about the HSA as a long-term, tax-free, compounded vehicle that is going to make a powerful impact on your retirement. Number 3, save your receipts for future tax-free reimbursement. Too many times people are spending money on healthcare related items and they aren't thinking about those expenses being able to be used through the HSA. Number 4, coordinate the HSA planning with retirement income and tax planning. Work with your professionals, your CPA, your financial planner. Have a coordinated approach where everyone's working for your best interest. And then lastly, number 5, review investment options and fees offered through the HSA custodian that you work with. Don't just leave it dormant. Take that next step, get it allocated so it's growing and you're really setting yourself up in the future for a big win. I want you to think about this with just a simple rule. FSA, spend it. HSA, grow it. I think there was a lot of good content for today. I think our audience is going to get a lot out of this. Look, we know this is complicated. If you have questions, if you want a second opinion, you just want to talk through whether or not the HSA is right for you, our contact information is below in the show notes, and we'd be glad to have a conversation. Until next time, thanks for joining us, and thanks for staying coachable.
We hope you enjoyed today's show, but you may have questions for our coaches, and they can be emailed at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. If you know someone that needs to hear this episode, we encourage you to share it. As a reminder, the content of this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as advice. On behalf of our coaches, we want to thank you for listening and for being coachable.
Investment advice offered through Merit Financial Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor.